Ethan Cross moved carefully through the ruined streets, his boots crunching on shattered glass. The air smelled of smoke and burnt metal. The sky above was red from the plasma storms, twisting like fire across the clouds somewhere far behind. His comms had gone dead, and the rest of his unit was gone. He had been sent on a simple reconnaissance mission. Check the ruins for any enemy activity and return. But nothing about this place was simple. The Xyloran ruins were older than Earth's oldest cities. With towering spires now broken in half and lying like fallen giants, strange markings glowed faintly on the walls. As if the stones themselves were alive, Ethan's helmet picked up faint movement ahead. He raised his rifle, stepping slowly into what had once been a great courtyard. Statues of alien warriors stood in rows, their faces sharp and proud, their eyes made of some kind of crystal. In the center of the courtyard, a shadow moved, tall, slow, and deliberate. The figure stepped into the red light. Her armor was black and gold, shaped to fit her tall, powerful frame. The helmet she wore had sharp horns sweeping back, and her cape swayed like a shadow behind her. When she spoke, her voice echoed strangely, as if it carried the weight of command across an entire battlefield. "You are far from your human lines," she said. Her helmet slid back, revealing a face unlike any Ethan had seen. Her skin was a deep silver tone, her golden eyes almost glowing. Her hair fell like strands of midnight metal. Ethan gripped his rifle tighter. "Identify yourself," he demanded. His training told him to keep his voice steady, but something in his chest tightened. This was no ordinary soldier. "I am Zareth," she said. War Empress of the Xylora Empire. The name hit him like a bullet. Every soldier had heard of her. The ruthless commander who had crushed 3 planetary rebellions in a single year. The one who led from the front, whose blade could cut through starship armor. Ethan stepped back. "I'm not here to fight," he said, but his eyes kept scanning for an escape. Her presence was overwhelming, not just because of who she was, but because of something else, something in the air, a heat that seemed to radiate from her skin. Her golden eyes narrowed, and then she smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "You're not here to fight, but you came into my territory," she said. "That makes you mine." Before he could react, more figures appeared from the shadows. Tall Xyloran warriors in heavy armor surrounded him. Their spears crackled with electric light. "Stand down," Zareth ordered them. She stepped closer to Ethan, her shadow falling over him. He realized she was taller than him by nearly a head. Her movements were slow, deliberate, like a predator circling prey. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, his voice low. Her gaze stayed locked on his face. "It is the season," she said simply. Her voice dropped, almost like a growl. "Once in my lifetime, I choose a mate, and I have chosen you." Ethan stared at her, certain he had misheard, but the look in her eyes told him she was deadly serious. "I'm human," he said. "You have your own people, your own traditions." Her smile widened slightly. "Traditions can change," she said. "I am Empress, I make them change." Ethan's instinct screamed at him to run. But the warriors had already closed in. Their spears formed a cage of crackling light. Around him, Zareth stepped so close he could feel the strange heat coming off her armor. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You will survive me, human, or you will not survive at all." The storm above them cracked, lightning dancing through the red clouds. It was as if the sky itself reacted to her words. Ethan's mind raced. He could try to fight, but even if he managed to take down Tuor, 3 of her guards, there was no way he could escape all of them, and Zareth. She wasn't just a warrior, she was something far more dangerous. The Empress turned sharply and gestured to her warriors. "Bring him," she commanded. Her cape swirled like black fire as she walked toward the ruined fortress at the far end of the courtyard. Ethan was forced forward, the warrior spears humming inches from his back. He looked around for any possible escape route, but the ruins seemed endless. Shadows hiding threats in every corner as they passed under the massive gates of the fortress. Ethan felt the temperature rise even more. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Somewhere deep inside, alien drums began to pound, slow and steady, like a ritual calling to life. The last thing Ethan saw before the heavy gates slammed shut was the Empress looking back at him, her golden eyes fixed on him with a hunger that had nothing to do with food. And in that moment, Ethan knew whatever was about to happen inside these walls, he might not come out the same man. Ethan's boots echoed against the smooth black floor as the warriors pushed him deeper into the fortress. The walls around him were carved with alien symbols, glowing faintly in shades of gold and crimson. Every corridor seemed to twist like a labyrinth, and the air grew heavier, warmer. Finally, the warriors stopped before a massive door made of dark metal. It opened without a sound, revealing a large chamber lit by red crystal light. The heat inside was almost suffocating, and the strange rhythm of the alien drums was louder now. In the center of the room stood Zarth, the War Empress. Her armor was gone, replaced by flowing black hand-gold ceremonial robes that shimmered like molten metal. The robe clung to her tall frame, the fabric moving like smoke with each step she took toward him. Her golden eyes glowed brighter here, reflecting the crystal light. "You've been brought before me," she said softly, but her voice still carried the power of command. "No one steps into my territory without my permission, and no one leaves without my mark." Ethan straightened his back, trying to sound calm. "I told you I'm not here to fight. I was separated from my unit." She circled him slowly, her eyes scanning him from head to toe. "Separated, yet armed and deep in my lands." She said, "You didn't stumble here by accident." "I had no idea this was your territory," he replied, his voice firm. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. "It is my season," she said. Her breathing was slow but heavy. "My people call it the burning cycle. Once in my lifetime, I must choose a mate strong enough to stand beside me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm human. I'm not part of your customs." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "But that is what makes you interesting," she said. "No one has ever seen me choose outside my own kind. They will call it madness. They will call it weakness." Her gaze sharpened. "But I will call it my decision." The warriors behind Ethan shifted, clearly uneasy. They whispered to one another in their own language, their voices tense. It was obvious that even they were shocked by her choice. Zareth raised her hand, and the room fell silent. "From this moment," she said, "you belong to me. You will not leave my side until the cycle ends." Ethan shook his head. "You can't just," but he never finished the sentence. The heat in the room intensified, and suddenly he realized it wasn't just from the crystals. It was coming from her. Waves of strange, almost magnetic energy rolling off her body. It made his heartbeat quicken, made the air feel thick in his lungs. "This is my mating heat," she said, her voice low. "The longer you resist, the harder it will be for you to stand. Few men survive it, but I think you will." Ethan tried to take a step back, but two guards blocked his way. Their spears glowed with crackling light, close enough to burn. Zareth reached forward and took his chin in her hand, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I will not harm you," she said, "unless you give me reason. But understand this, Ethan Cross, your life now belongs to me." He pulled his head away. "I'm not yours," he said sharply. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes seemed to grow hotter. "You will be," she whispered. Then she turned to her guards. "Remove his weapon and armor. He will face the trials as tradition demands." They moved quickly, stripping away his rifle. sidearm, and protective plates. In moments, he was left with only the black undersuit. The cool air from the corridor vanished the instant the doors closed again. Sealing him inside with her, Zareth walked to a raised platform in the center of the room, gesturing for him to follow. 3 trials, she said. The first will test your strength. The second, your mind. The third, your will to endure me. Ethan crossed his arms. And if I refuse? Her smile returned, slow and dangerous. Then you will die before the sun rises over my fortress, she said without hesitation. He studied her for a moment, weighing his chances. The logical choice was to wait for an opportunity to escape. But something in her eyes told him that running would be harder than he imagined. Zareth stepped down from the platform and walked past him toward the door. Rest, she said. Tomorrow the trials begin, if you survive. Then perhaps you will understand why I chose you. The guards returned to escort him to a smaller chamber. Inside, the walls glowed dimly, and a single bed made of alien metal stood against the far side. The heat here was softer, but still present. Like the air itself was alive, Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his mind racing. This was more than a cultural tradition. This was something primal. Something dangerous. He could feel it every time she looked at him. Every time her voice touched the air. Outside, the drums continued to beat. Slow and steady, the sound reminded him of a countdown. And he knew each beat was leading him closer to something he wasn't ready for. Morning came with no sunlight. Only the deep red glow of the crystals in the fortress walls told Ethan that the night had passed. The air was still heavy with heat, but now it carried the low hum of voices outside his chamber. The doors slid open, and 2 Xyloran warriors stepped in. Their black armor gleamed in the light, and each carried a spear tipped with blue plasma. The Empress summons you. One said in a voice that sounded more like a growl. Ethan rose slowly, his muscles still sore from yesterday's forced march through the ruins. He followed them down the winding corridors until they reached a massive set of gates carved with images of alien battles. When the gates opened, he stepped into a vast arena. The air here was different, sharp and electric. The walls of the arena rose high above him, packed with thousands of alien spectators. Their armor reflected the crystal lights, creating a sea of flickering gold and black. In the highest seat, Zareth sat on a throne carved from the skull of some enormous beast. Her golden eyes locked on him instantly. This is the first trial, she called, her voice carrying over the crowd without effort. The trial of strength. The one who survives earns the right to face the next challenge. Ethan scanned the arena floor. At the far end, a massive gate opened, and something stepped out at. First, he thought it was a machine, but then it roared a deep, rumbling sound that shook the ground. It was a beast unlike anything he had seen, 4-legged, with armor like scales and claws as long as his forearm. Its mouth glowed faintly, as if fire burned inside its throat. The crowd roared with approval. The beast lowered its head and began to charge. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He dove to the side, feeling the ground tremble as the creature thundered past. He had no weapons, only his suit and his training. The creature turned sharply, its glowing eyes fixed on him. He noticed the armor plates along its neck, thick but not unbroken, between the plates, small gaps revealed softer flesh. If he could get close enough, maybe he could hurt it. But getting close meant risking those claws. The beast lunged again. And this time, Ethan ran straight toward it at the last second. He dropped to the ground and slid under its body, feeling the heat radiating from its skin. He grabbed a loose piece of metal from the sand, probably left from a previous fight, and as he slid out behind it, he jammed the shard into one of the gaps in its armor. The beast roared in pain, spinning to slash at him. The claws ripped across his arm, cutting through the fabric of his suit. Pain flared, but he forced himself to move. The crowd was shouting now, some in excitement, others in disbelief, from her throne. Zareth watched with unblinking focus. Her fingers rested on the armrest, but her eyes followed his every movement. The beast came at him again, slower now, limping. Slightly, Ethan waited until it was close enough, then ran toward one of the arena walls at the last moment. He kicked off the wall and leaped onto the creature's back. The shard of metal was still lodged in its neck. He grabbed it and drove it deeper, twisting hard. The beast let out one final roar before collapsing to the ground. The sand shook as its massive body stilled. For a moment, the arena was silent. Then the crowd erupted. Some shouted in anger they had expected to see him torn apart, but others cheered, impressed by his defiance. Zareth rose from her throne and stepped down into the arena. Her presence made the crowd quiet again. She stopped before Ethan, her gaze burning into his. "You survived," she said simply. Her eyes flicked to the blood on his arm, "and you bleed for it." Ethan met her stare. "You wanted strength." He said, "You got it." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "This is only the beginning," she said. Then she turned to the crowd, raising her hand. "The human passes the first trial. Tomorrow, he faces the trial of the mind." The crowd roared again, the sound rolling like thunder through the arena. As the guards led Ethan away, he glanced back at Zareth. She was still watching him, and in her eyes, he saw something strange, not just hunger or power, but a flicker of respect. Back in his chamber, he sat on the edge of the bed, nursing the wound on his arm. The air was still heavy with heat, but now it carried something else, the weight of the next challenge. He didn't know what the trial of the mind would be, but he was sure of one thing. Zareth wasn't testing him just for tradition. She was testing him for herself, and that made the game far more dangerous. The next day, the fortress was louder, busier, the sound of marching. Boots and clanging weapons echoed through the halls. Ethan felt the shift in the air even before the guards came for him. They didn't take him to the arena this time. Instead, they led him to a high balcony overlooking the city beyond the fortress walls. What he saw made him stop. The sky was thick, with black smoke, and warships hovered over the distant horizon. The alien city below, built from sharp black stone and glowing towers, was bracing for battle. Squads of Xyloran soldiers moved through the streets, setting up plasma cannons and energy shields. Civilians hurried into underground shelters. Zareth stood at the edge of the balcony, wearing full battle armor once again. Her golden eyes were sharper than ever. Her cape rippled in the hot wind. She didn't turn when she spoke. "The trial of the mind will have to wait," she said. "War has come to my gates." Ethan stepped up beside her. "From the looks of it, you've been expecting this." Her jaw tightened. "I've been expecting my rivals to make a move, but not during the cycle. This is personal." He studied her face. "They're attacking because of me, aren't they?" She finally looked at him. "They think your presence is a weakness. They think my choosing a human proves I've lost my mind." Her voice lowered. "Now I will prove to them I've lost nothing." Without another word, she strode toward the command hall. Ethan followed. The room was filled with alien generals, studying a massive holographic map. Ships glowed as small red dots closing in on the fortress. Zareth pointed to one of the generals. "Deploy the eastern flank, hold the river crossing. If they get through there, the city falls." Then she turned to another. "Ready my personal guard. I will meet the enemy at the front." The generals hesitated. Empress. The heat one began, but her glare silenced him instantly. When they left, Ethan spoke. "You're going to fight like this? You said your mating heat makes it harder to focus." Zareth's eyes burned. "It makes me stronger." She said, "It sharpens every sense, makes every movement faster. The only danger is to those who face me." Moments later, she was. On the battlefield, the heat outside was even worse than in the fortress. The red sky burned with plasma fire as enemy ships descended. Ethan watched from a ridge as Zareth led her army forward. She was a storm in motion. Her twin plasma blades flashed in arcs of gold, cutting through enemy soldiers like paper. Her voice rose in sharp commands, rallying her troops. He had seen skilled fighters before, but never like this. She didn't just fight, she dominated the field. Every step was calculated, every strike precise. Even as the enemy pressed hard, her lines never broke, but he also noticed something else. Whenever there was a break in the fighting, her gaze would sweep the battlefield until it found him. It was only for a second. But it happened again and again. The battle raged for hours. The enemy was relentless, throwing wave after wave of troops at the fortress gates. At one point, an enemy flyer broke through the defenses. Strafing the ridge where Ethan stood, he dove for cover. But the blast sent him rolling down the slope when he looked up. The flyer was already circling for another pass before it could. Fire, a golden blur, shot across the field. Zareth leaped onto the craft mid-flight, drove her blade through its cockpit, and rode it down as it exploded in flames. She landed in front of him, breathing hard. "You're too close to the fight," she said, her voice sharp but not angry. She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the shelter of the walls. "If I lose you now, the cycle ends." "I can take care of myself," he said, but her grip didn't loosen by the time they reached the gates. The tide of battle had turned. The enemy lines were breaking, retreating under the force of her army. Her warriors roared in victory as the last of the attackers fled into the smoke. Inside the fortress, Zareth removed her helmet. Her hair clung to her skin, and her eyes glowed hotter than before. The heat around her was almost unbearable now. Ethan could see the strain in her movements. Though she tried to hide it, that, she said, her voice low, was only the first wave. They will come again. But now they know the human is under my protection. Ethan met her gaze. "And what happens when your enemies decide killing me is the fastest way to hurt you?" Her lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "Then they will learn the cost of trying." She stepped closer, her heat washing over him. "The war isn't over, Ethan. And neither is the cycle." Somewhere deep in the fortress, the drums began again, slow and heavy, a sound that mixed with the distant echoes of the battlefield. The war and the heat had merged into one, and Ethan knew he was now caught in both. The fortress felt different after the battle. The victory drums had stopped, but the air was still thick with heat, not just from Zareth's burning cycle, but from the tension of what everyone knew. This war was far from over. Ethan was in his chamber when the door slid open without warning. 4 armored guards entered, their plasma spears raised. They spoke in short, clipped words. "Come with us." He didn't resist, but his gut told him something was wrong. They didn't lead him to Zareth's command hall or the arena. Instead, they took him through a side passage that descended into the cold, dark underlevels of the fortress. The walls here were rough stone, not polished crystal. The air was damp, smelling faintly of metal and ash. At the end of the corridor was another door. When it opened, Ethan saw a figure waiting, not one of Zareth's warriors, but a tall alien in silver armor marked with red stripes. His face was sharp, his eyes pale and cold. "I am Commander Vare," the alien said. His voice was calm, but carried a blade's edge. "I speak for the coalition of free worlds. We are your Empress's enemies." Ethan glanced at the guards, realizing they were not Zarya's soldiers at all. Somehow, the enemy had infiltrated the fortress, and no one had stopped them. "What do you want?" Ethan asked, keeping his voice even. Vare stepped closer. "We know what she has done. She has chosen you, a human, during her burning cycle. She has broken tradition and weakened her claim to the throne. This makes her vulnerable. if she falls. Her empire falls. Ethan's fists tightened. You're planning to kill her. We're offering you freedom, Vare replied smoothly. Come with us. We'll smuggle you out of the fortress. You'll be returned to your people, unharmed. No more trials, no more heat, no more war, and what happens to her? Ethan asked. Though he already knew the answer. She will be removed, Vare said simply. It is the way of power. Without you to distract her, she will fight harder, but we will break her. And the galaxy will be free from her rule, Ethan. Shook his head. You're not freeing the galaxy. You're replacing one ruler with another. Vare's expression didn't change. We're offering you life. Human. The alternative is death. When the next wave comes, she won't be able to protect you. And when she falls, you will fall with her. The offer was tempting in the cold logic of survival. But Ethan's mind replayed the image of Zareth leaping onto that enemy. Flyer cutting it from the sky just to protect him. He remembered her standing in the arena, declaring before thousands that he had passed her trial. I'm not betraying her, Ethan said finally. His voice was steady. Vare's pale eyes narrowed. Then you are a fool. He gestured to his guards. Make him reconsider. The guards struck without hesitation. The first blow hit Ethan in the stomach, forcing the air from his lungs. Another slammed into his ribs. Pain shot through him, but he stayed on his feet, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing him collapse. Vare stepped closer again. Last chance, say the word. And we walk out of here together. You'll be safe before the next battle begins. Ethan spit blood onto the floor. Tell your soldiers. They'll have to kill me here. The commander's lips curled into a cold smile. So be it. He raised his hand to signal another strike, but the air suddenly shifted. A low, dangerous hum filled the chamber. The guards froze, every torch on the wall seemed to flicker under the weight of an unseen presence. Then the door burst open, and Zareth stepped in. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. The golden glow in her eyes was brighter than Ethan had ever seen. Her voice was sharp enough to cut steel. Leave him, Vare tried to speak. But she was already moving. Her blade flashed once, and the nearest guard fell before he even had time to scream. The others backed away quickly. Knowing a fight against her here would be suicide, Zareth stopped only inches from Vare. You dared step into my fortress and touch what is mine? She asked, her voice like a storm building. You weaken yourself with him? Vare hissed. And it will destroy you. Her expression didn't change. But her voice dropped to a whisper that carried more danger than a shout. It will destroy. You first. Vare backed toward the door, his gaze locked on hers. Then we will see who survives the next war. He turned and left, his guards vanishing with him into the shadows. Ethan exhaled slowly, his ribs aching. Zareth stepped toward him, her hand brushing over his shoulder, a rare gesture of gentleness from her. You refused them, she said, even knowing it could have freed you. I'm not walking away. He replied, not like that. Her gaze held his for a long moment, and for the first time, Ethan thought he saw something in her eyes. Beyond heat, beyond pride, something closer to trust. Then you will face the next trial, she said quietly, not because tradition demands it, but because now you have earned it. Somewhere above them, the fortress drums began again. Louder than before, the next battle was coming, but so was the next step in the cycle. The fortress was quiet that night. Too quiet, even the usual sound of marching boots in the corridors had faded. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed in his chamber. The ache in his ribs, a constant reminder of the enemy's offer earlier. He knew this silence wasn't peace. It was the calm before something bigger. The door slid open, and Zareth stepped in, not in armor. Not in the ceremonial robes from the earlier trials, but in a plain fitted garment of dark crimson. Her hair was unbound, falling over her shoulders like molten midnight. Her golden eyes burned hotter than he had ever seen. "It is time," she said, her voice low, steady. The final trial, Ethan stood. "The trial of the will," he said. Recalling her earlier words, she nodded once. "It is not fought with weapons or strength. It is not a game of the mind. It is endurance of me, of the cycle, of the heat. If you survive it, you will be bound to me in the eyes of my people, and if I don't?" He asked. Her gaze didn't waver. "Then you die. And your name will be carved into the stone as one who failed." 2 guards appeared behind her. But they carried no weapons. They simply followed as she led Ethan through the corridors, deeper into the heart of the fortress than he had ever gone. The air grew hotter with every step. The walls here pulsed faintly, almost as if the fortress itself was alive. They stopped before a pair of black stone doors. Marked with gold runes, Zareth pressed her palm against them, and they swung open with a deep, echoing sound. Inside was a wide, circular chamber lit only by the glow of molten rock flowing in channels along the floor. The heat was intense, pressing down like a physical weight. In the center was a low platform surrounded by curved stone walls. "This is the crucible," Zareth said, stepping inside, once entered. "Neither of us may leave until the cycle's peak passes. It will push you beyond pain, beyond exhaustion. You will want to run, to fight, to give in, but the only way out is to endure." Ethan swallowed hard. "And you? What happens to you during this?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "My heat will burn through every thought, every barrier. My control will be tested as much as your endurance. If you break before I do, I win. If you last until I break, then you win." There was no further warning. Zareth moved toward him, her presence overwhelming. Her heat rolled off her in waves, making his skin prickle. It was more than temperature. It was like standing too close to a star. At first, Ethan tried to focus on breathing, on staying steady. She circled him like she had on the day they first met, but now there was no armor, no battlefield between them. Every step she took seemed to pull the air from the room. Every look she gave him pressed against his mind. Minutes became hours. Or maybe it just felt that way. The heat was relentless, soaking into his muscles, clouding his thoughts. At times, he saw her clearly, pacing, watching him with those molten eyes. At other times, it was all a blur of gold and red. Once, his knees buckled, and he caught himself. On the edge of the platform, Zareth's lips curved in a small smile. "You are close to falling," she said. "Most would have by now." "I'm not most," he managed. The heat surged higher. She stepped so close, their breaths mingled. "Prove it," she whispered. His mind screamed at him to give in. His body begged for release from the pressure. But something deeper, the same thing that made him refuse the enemy's bargain, kept him standing, kept him facing her. The molten channels in the floor glowed brighter, and he realized the room itself was responding to the peak of her heat. His vision swam, his heart beat loud in his ears, and then something shifted. She stepped back, her breathing heavy now. Her eyes still burned, but there was strain there. Her movements weren't as smooth as before. It wasn't just him struggling, she was, too. "You endure," she said, almost in disbelief. Ethan straightened. Even though every muscle screamed in protest, "Told you." She let out a slow breath, and the heat in the room began to ease. The molten glow faded, and the crushing weight in the air lifted. The trial was over. Zareth stepped forward again. But this time, she didn't circle him or press. She simply placed her hand against his chest, her golden eyes locking with his. "You survived me, Ethan Cross," she said quietly. "No other human could have. No other Xyloran in centuries has." The guards outside opened the doors, but she didn't move. The moment stretched between them, carrying both the victory and the danger of what it meant. From this moment, she said, her voice carrying the weight of a vow. You are my mate and my equal, and together we will face the galaxy. The great gates of the crucible opened slowly. The heat inside still clung to Ethan's skin as he stepped out into the cool corridors of the fortress. 2 lines of Zard's elite guards stood waiting, their spears lowered in salute. The moment was silent at first, then a deep drumbeat echoed through the walls, slow and steady. It wasn't the sound of war this time. It was the sound of recognition, in Xyloran tradition. Those drums meant one thing. The trial was over, and the victor had been chosen. Zareth emerged beside him, her golden eyes dimmer now, but still fierce. The soldiers didn't look at Ethan with the suspicion they once had. Now there was something else in their stares: respect, maybe even acceptance. They walked together through the fortress halls. Word of what had happened spread faster than they moved. By the time they reached the command hall, almost the entire court had gathered. Generals, nobles, and warriors all turned to see the human who had endured the burning cycle. One of the senior generals stepped forward, his armor polished and his voice loud. By law, the mate who survives the cycle stands beside the Empress as her equal, he declared. The words seemed heavy in the air. Ethan glanced at Zareth, but she was watching the room, not him. Ethan Cross, she said finally, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. You came into my lands as an intruder. You stood against my warriors, my trials, my heat, and my enemies, and you did not break. She stepped closer, her gaze fixed on him. For this, you are no longer just human in my eyes. You are Xyloran in spirit. You will stand at my side not as a prisoner, but as my mate. The crowd responded with a mix of cheers and stunned murmurs. Some looked thrilled, others clearly struggled to accept it, but no one spoke against her. A guard brought forward a ceremonial blade. It was long and curved, made from the bone of a massive beast. Zareth took it in both hands and held it out to him. Take it, she said, and no one in my empire will dare to question your place. Ethan accepted the blade, its weight solid and strange in his hands. The moment he gripped it, the court knelt not to him, but to the bond it represented. Later, in the quiet of the strategy chamber, Zareth stood over a holographic map. The war wasn't over. Enemy fleets still gathered beyond the borders, but her focus shifted when she noticed Ethan watching her. You could have left, she said. When Vare made his offer, you could have killed me. Ethan replied 12 times in those trials, her lips curved in the faintest smile. And yet, here we are, she said. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that came from shared survival. That night, the fortress was alive with celebration. Alien drums pounded through the streets. Fires burned in great metal braziers, sending sparks into the sky. Warriors clashed their blades together in ritual displays. Children darted between the legs of armored soldiers, laughing. Ethan stood on one of the high balconies, looking out over the glowing city for the first time since arriving. He didn't feel like an outsider. The danger was still real, but so was the strange sense of belonging. Zareth joined him, her armor gone, replaced by a long cloak of black and gold. They will remember tonight, she said. Long after the war is over, they will tell the story of the human who survived the Empress. Ethan glanced at her. And what about us? Her golden eyes met his. We survived together, she said simply, or not at all. Down in the streets, the drums kept beating, but to Ethan, they no longer sounded like a countdown. They sounded like the start of something new, a future he hadn't chosen, but one he would fight for anyway. And as the night deepened over the alien city, the human and the War Empress stood side by side, two unlikely allies bound by trial, by survival, and by something neither of them had planned. For the galaxy beyond might still burn, but inside the fortress walls, the first true peace had begun.